Praise be Jesus Christ, now and forever. Well, it's been a busy month here at St. Edward. We've had the Life Chain, the Knights of Columbus food giveaway, our school's annual Fall Fest. We had the groundbreaking ceremony of our school's expansion project. And of course, on the 13th, we celebrated the feast day of our patron, St. Edward. But earlier this month, on the 15th, it was the feast of St. Teresa of Avila. Now, anyone who has read even a little of St. Teresa has likely come across the famous prayer simply known as, "Let nothing disturb you." It goes like this: "Let nothing disturb you. Let nothing frighten you. All things pass away. God never changes. Patience obtains all things. They who have God lack nothing. God alone is enough." This has been a go-to prayer for many people, especially in times of anxiety. But when you think about it, it's a very bold prayer. Let nothing disturb you. Let nothing frighten you. All things pass away. God never changes. Patience obtains all things. They who have God lack nothing. God alone is enough. Listen to how St. Teresa is so absolute in her language. What if something disturbs us? What if something frightens us? I guarantee each of us has been frightened or disturbed by something. St. Teresa herself likely had to contend with her own fears as well. But through spiritual discipline and prayer, she was able to transcend her fears and live a saintly life. While we do have things that disturb or frighten us, we acknowledge those things, but then use the spiritual tools that we have been given to overcome those fears, so that we don't lose sight of who God is and what is our goal, which, like St. Teresa, is to become a saint. Number 1, let nothing disturb you. Do you remember when the 24-hour news channel became a thing? It was amazing. You didn't have to wait until tomorrow's newspaper to find out what was going on in the world, or wait until the local news to come on. At any time of the day, every day, you could turn on the TV and catch the news. And then we got social media. And now not only can we get the news anytime, now anyone with a smartphone can get it anywhere. And there's a lot of convenience in having the world's information in your pocket. Do you want to know the weather? Do you want to know who the Lions are playing this Sunday? You can find it anytime and anywhere. The downside is that there is a lot of negative news out there, and negative news is more entertaining, and so the airwaves are intentionally filled with it. Of course, it's not airways if we're talking about the internet, but that's not the point. That's a problem for us, not because we shouldn't know what's going on. The problem is that we are bombarded with so much bad news, and we become so used to it that all we know is the feeling of being unsettled and uneasy. There's even a phenomenon called doom scrolling. Doom scrolling is like binging on bad news. And even though it troubles us and leaves us feeling uncertain, anxious, or distressed, we seem to want to keep looking for more. But we have a choice. Let nothing disturb you. That is a choice that we can make. We can choose not to be disturbed. You can choose to limit the time you watch the news or read what's on the internet. Moreover, we can choose to not be disturbed even in the presence of disturbing things. Number 2, let nothing frighten you. Fortitude is the virtue that allows us to persevere towards some good, even in the face of great difficulty. Fortitude is not the elimination of fear. It doesn't mean that we have no fear. It means that we have the ability, the power, to control our fear and not allow it to prevent us from doing what we know must be done. So how do we grow in fortitude? Well, fortitude flows naturally from faith, hope, and charity when we believe the promises of God, faith, and have confidence not in ourselves but in the strength of Christ, hope, and we are motivated by love, charity, we will find ourselves filled naturally with the virtue of fortitude. I'm a big fan of The Lord of the Rings, and there's a great speech that Samwise Gamgee gives reminding Frodo of the need to keep going. And he's talking about the great stories of heroism. And he says,
Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't.
That's fortitude in a nutshell. The strength to persevere and not turn back. Number 3, all things are passing. At first, this doesn't sound comforting. The thought of all things passing might make us even more distressed. But here it refers to that Carmelite virtue of detachment. St. John of the Cross illustrated the need for the mortification of all voluntary desires or detachment. He described a bird tethered to the earth with a string. Whether it's a small string or a large rope, it doesn't matter. Either will hinder its flight to God. Father John Hardon defines attachment as emotional dependence, either of one person on another, or of a person on some real or illusory object. The first condition for progress in sanctity is some mastery over one's attachments. To say that all things are passing is to remind ourselves that it is pointless to hold on to worldly things. They are going to pass anyway, and if we are too attached to them, then our losing them will cause us great sadness. But when I allow my soul to fully accept this truth, I get a glimpse of pure freedom, even ecstasy, which in the Catholic mystical sense means that we are taken out of ourselves in order to be completely attached to God. In those moments, I realize that all I need to do is get out of the way of my fears. They are just passing through. Number 4, God never changes. This is a theological statement about the nature of God. God, by definition, cannot change. He's God. He's infinitely perfect and complete in himself. He cannot change and wouldn't need to change anyway. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever, which makes him the one thing that we can always depend on. Most human beings fear change, and it seems that so many things today are in chaos, both in the world and even in the church. But as long as we have God, no matter how much life changes, there is one reality that never changes. That unwavering presence of God, along with his love for us, is what can always keep us grounded. Number 5, patience obtains all things. What is patience? Patience is the strength to bear suffering without sadness or bitterness or anger or resentment. Patience hardens the soul, helping a person bear hardships peacefully. So how does patience obtain all things? Because, as the old saying goes, nothing good comes easy. There will always be some suffering or hardship or trial to endure. Without patience, one cannot overcome those sufferings and thus cannot obtain the good that the soul desires. And often what causes us to succumb to the heavy weight of our crosses is not the crosses themselves. It is often the sadness or discouragement that we experience because of them. And sometimes that's enough for us to give up. I just don't want to go on with it. Patience then allows us to bear suffering. Note that patience doesn't get rid of the suffering. It allows us to bear the suffering without becoming discouraged or bitter. It's related to the virtue of long suffering, also known as longanimity. In his Summa Theologica, St. Thomas Aquinas maintains that longanimity and patience both deal with enduring difficulties for the sake of a good. But patience focuses on the difficulties and overcoming them, whereas longanimity focuses on the good and obtaining it. Both are necessary to obtain the good. Longanimity is waiting in hope, but it needs patience to fortify the soul against the difficulty of waiting itself. Number 6, they who possess God lack nothing. Inflation, supply chain issues, threats of economic downturns or collapses, social unrest, threats of war, reality of war. There are many things that are concerns for people. It seems like more people are mindful of all of these things that are going on and are becoming preppers. Those who believe that some catastrophic disaster or calamity is likely to occur in the future, and they make active preparations for it. Usually it involves stockpiling food, water, supplies, etc., so that they can take care of themselves and their families when said disaster arrives. Let it be clear that there's nothing wrong inherently with stocking up on necessities so as to be prepared for a period of uncertainty. There's nothing wrong with having a pantry, with canning fruits and vegetables, with having first aid and other supplies on hand, and so forth. But it does become a problem if fear is the motivation that influences us. We listen to the parable of the rich fool. Then he told them a parable. There was a rich man whose land produced a bountiful harvest. He asked himself, "What shall I do? For I do not have space to store my harvest." And he said, "This is what I shall do. I shall tear down my barns and build larger ones. There I shall store all my grain and other goods. And I shall say to myself, now as for you, you have so many good things stored up for many years. Rest, eat, drink, be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this night your life will be demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, to whom will they belong? Thus will it be for the one who stores up treasure for himself, but is not rich in what matters to God." And that's because, number 7, God alone is enough. God alone suffices. Number 1, God is perfection. Number 2, we were made by God for God, and only He can satisfy us. Number 3, no created thing in this world can substitute for God. And that's the thing that one must accept. I must truly believe that God alone suffices. The less I believe that, the more I'm going to search for lesser things to try to satisfy the insufficiency. But no matter how long I search, I'm never going to find it in these lesser things. That's because God alone suffices. It is the Apostle Philip who said, "Lord, show us the Father, and that will be enough for us." He alone can fill all our emptiness. He alone can satisfy all our needs. He alone can make us content, and even more than content. This is why we work to empty our heart of all other things. For if the Father alone suffices, then we have no need for material or worldly goods, exterior wealth, and even the praise of others. And so I encourage you to get to know that prayer of St. Teresa of Avila. As I said, it's a good prayer, not only in times of anxiety or worry, but really for any time. And it's a short prayer that we should all have in our arsenal anyway, a prayer that we should all become familiar with. May the intercession and prayers and example of St. Teresa of Avila help us to persevere in growing in holiness. God bless you.